All right. Well, Thursday night, the Bombers look to go 10-0, and I don't think we could possibly have a better guest to come on, talk about the season that the Blue and Gold are having in the rest of the Canadian Football League than CFL and Blue Bomber legend, the Turtle Man himself, Milt Stegall, who joins the show. Milton, how are you, my friend? Great to have you on
Man,
WST.
it's an honor and a pleasure to be on, man. I'm excited about the CFL and, of course, what the Bombers are doing so far this season.
Yeah, it's a pretty fun topic to get to, certainly on the show, walking the streets of Winnipeg. This team, Bomber fans have been on a high for the better part of the last 3 years with the 2019 Grey Cup, running it back last season. But Milt, I mean, I don't even know where we start with just how impressive running the table through the first half of the season has been, especially when you consider the schedule and how much football they played. I mean, you've been talking a lot about this on TSN, but how about them Bombers?
Man, it has to be awesome to live in Winnipeg and Manitoba right now, because what the Bombers have done, as you alluded to, since 2019, basically since Zach stepped on the scene, it's been truly amazing. It's a good time to be a Winnipeg Blue Bomber and a Winnipeg Blue Bomber fan. And what they've done this year is even more amazing. 9-0, on the verge of hopefully being 10-0. And the way the season has been structured, they're the only team who hadn't had a bye week. They played 2 games on the road within 6 days, and they were able to weather that storm. So right now, in my opinion, their only opponent is themselves. And you look at this upcoming game, their toughest opponent is that bye week. You don't want these players thinking about that bye week, because man to man, physically, they're a lot better than these Montreal Alouettes. But if those players start thinking about going home and seeing family and sleeping in their own bed, that could somewhat get deterred from what they're trying to do. So as long as they're focused, and what I've seen and what I've heard of what Mike O'Shea does in week in and week out, as long as they're focused, they should start the season 10-0.
Well, you know what? I'm glad you mentioned Coach O'Shea, because it just seems like under O'Sh, they have built the most professional, workman-like culture of accountability, of showing up to do your job, and every guy playing for each other. And I mean, there would be plenty of games earlier on in this season where you could have understood maybe a little bit of a letdown. I mean, considering how much they played, the travel, all those things. Mm-hmm. Mike O'Shea won't even mention that stuff. I mean, those excuses don't even begin to enter the conversation. And, right. I mean, sometimes it's boring and cliche, but they're looking at the next practice, the next rep, the next play, the next game. And as boring as that might be for the media, that's what wins football games and what wins championships, isn't it?
100%. And I talked to a guy, head equipment guy, Brad Foddy, who's been there basically since went forever. And he told me, and he wasn't talking about any bad about any other structure or any other head coaches, but he said what Mike O'Shea has in place is almost flawless. It's almost perfect. It's impeccable. What he does, what he preaches to the players, to the coaches, about moving on regardless of what happened, and making sure everyone understands their role and become superstars at their role. Not superstars, but superstars at their role. So, I mean, it's truly amazing what he's done for this organization. When you think about it, some years back, there were a lot of people saying, we need to get rid of this guy. He's not fit for this organization. But what he's done, the way he keeps his composure, and the way the team follow his lead, it's truly something special. If I'm correct, I don't know if Mike O'Shea is under contract next year. I don't understand what's going on with that. But if I'm the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, I'm writing him, giving him a blank check and saying, whatever you want, we're willing to give it to you, because he's done so much, not only for that organization, but for the entire city and for the entire province, Manitoba.
Well, there won't only be a check waiting for Mike O'Shea, but I'll tell you what, if they can get it done again this season, I think they might start working on that bust outside the stadium right now, because, I mean, he's certainly doing things that have never been done. And, well, I mean, we haven't had a three-peat champion since the Moon Edmonton teams of the early 80s. So it really is incredible. I want to ask you about the offense in particular. Zach Collaros has had a wild season. I mean, there have been a couple games. I mean, even Montreal threw a few picks. The Edmonton game where they won, completing only 7 passes. But, man, Milt, I mean, the way, especially earlier on when the offensive line wasn't totally intact, the way he was creating time, creating space, to give his receivers a chance to get open. I mean, I know we've all been talking about Nate Rourke, and we'll talk about the incredible season that he's having right now. But man, Zach is playing at a very, very high level, and you can't win 9 games in a row without your quarterback leading the way.
Not in the CFL. If your quarterback is not playing well, you're not going to win too many other games. Ask the majority of teams in the East, and they'll answer that question. So he's playing at a high level, and it's been that way since he stepped on the field at the end of 2019. And those players are feeding off of him. You talk about that offensive line. There were some talks because early on, Brady Olivera, Augustine, whoever was in the backfield wasn't, getting a bunch of yards, but now they're getting that going. But this offense is going to continue to play as well as their quarterback, Zach Collaros, is playing. And he's playing, once again, at an MOP level. Of course, we saw some mistakes last game, but when you have a team as good as Winnipeg, not just offensively, when your quarterback, when one of your superstars is not playing to his best at the time, those other facets, those other players will step up, and that's what happened. But Zach will continue to play at a high level. He's found his groove. Him and Buck Pierce have a great relationship. That marriage is still in the honeymoon phase, if you ask me, the way they're going. So it's a great mixture of players and attitudes and the way they're playing right now. They're just having fun. Yeah, of course, their schedule early on was tough with not having a bye, but when you're winning, you're having fun. You see players dancing, having fun, enjoying themselves. They don't care who gets the credit. As long as they're winning, everything looks good for this team.
Milt, being the great at the wide receiver position, I wanted to ask you about the guy that has to be the leading candidate for the Rookie of the Year, Dalton Schoen. I mean, what an emergence he's had in this Bomber offense through the first 9 games. I mean, rarely do you see a rookie come in with that sort of an impact, but I mean, he has answered every test and every challenge and seems to be getting better and more comfortable with each game.
And I won't put him on the level as Nathan Rourke as far as impact at a young age, but what he's doing, it's pretty amazing. And I say that because most young guys, especially Americans, when they come in, they feel comfortable at the outside receivers. It was that case for me, Roy Simon. We talk about this. It takes a while to get used to that slot as an American. It took me about 15 to 16 games. Same with Roy Simon when I talked to him, but Schoen has been able to step in, and it's like he's been here before. It's like he's been practicing on this for years because he's able to adjust right away, and it's almost like him and Zach have been practicing for years because they're on the same page. And he's not a fast guy or anything, but he knows how to use angles. He knows how to separate from opposing defensive backs with his size, and when he gets open, Zach knows how to find him. So the fact that he's able to make that big impact at that slot position only in his first year, that's a testament to not only him, but to Zach and Buck Pierce and everything and the way they surround those players. So good for him for making that adjustment right away in the CFL.
The Turtle Man, Milt Stegall, with us on Winnipeg Sports Talk, discussing the undefeated Blue Bombers. Tickets still available for the game Thursday night at IG Field in the rematch against the Montreal Alouettes. Milt, you mentioned Brady Olivera, and we listened to him speak with the media yesterday after practice, coming off a couple real solid games. And he mentioned the pressure that he was feeling taking over for Andrew Harris, the responsibility of being in that job, and just how tough it was when things weren't going well early on in the season. I think back to 2 key games. The game in BC, where the Bomber running game was really snuffed out earlier in that week against Toronto. And they rushed for 80 yards or so in the first quarter, and that seemed to open everything up for Zach Collaros. And he had a real strong game against Calgary a couple weeks back when they were down some players and really needed it. How much more scary of a Blue Bomber team are they for the rest of the Canadian Football League if this running game is able to consistently move the chains?
Yeah, that's a problem. That's a big problem, man. You just look at the last 2 games, and you can't compare him to Andrew Harris. You're talking about one of the greatest running backs in CFL history and the greatest Canadian running back. But he's starting to look like Andrew Harris in these last 2 games. Some of the catches he made, some of the runs he's made. And if they could get that running game back to where it's been when Andrew Harris was there, they're going to be a problem because we know what Zach does at a quarterback. But now that offensive line is able to come off that line of scrimmage and smack those defensive linemen and linebackers in the face because they have that running game. That sets up the play action pass, and the sky's the limit for it. So I know there was a lot of pressure put on from the outside, I'm sure Brady was putting a lot of pressure on himself. You're trying to replace Andrew Harris, which you can't replace. And I say, don't try to fill his shoes. Just make your shoes your own. Make sure your own shoes are tied tight. And it seems like that's what he's doing. He's creating his own path. He's not trying to follow the path of Andrew Harris. But that running game continues to keep churning out, especially when you get into those October and November and those bad weather games when you need that running attack. It's going to be a tough time trying to stop this Winnipeg Blue Bombers from winning another Grey Cup.
Well, and from a receiver perspective, how exciting is it when you see that running game start to get going, especially early in a game, because of what that means for what the defense has to worry about and the opportunities that might give the opportunity to guys in the passing game?
Yeah, it opens it up. It forces teams to go to man-to-man. And all receivers, that's all we want. Give us an opportunity to go mano-a-mano, and we're going to make some plays, And when you're running the ball like that, those linebackers, they have to come up tight. They have to come up because they have to try to stop the run, and that's when you get the big plays. That's when you get the big plays over the top. That's when the receivers get to showcase their skills, score touchdowns, dance, take off their helmet, throw off that long hair that some of these receivers have. But that's what you live for. But it's not easy. You have to grind. Receivers have to go out there and make sure they do their job and block it so you can create those big plays. But it seems like it's happening now. Well, we saw early on the running game was struggling, but right now it seemed to be going in the right direction. And they needed these last two games. But you bring those two games together, the running game and the passing game, you have a complete game. And they're 9-0 now. And imagine what they can do once they finally continue to keep that running game going.
Milt, when you look at the Bombers, just to finish up talking about the blue and gold, I mean, is there any areas that you can see that this team really needs to improve, or have they sort of set the bar and they just need to maintain that going through the rest of the season and into the playoffs?
Well, of course, you have areas. You want to improve in every area. I've watched film, but I haven't just nitpicked like coaches do. And I'm sure if you go into a meeting, Mike O'Shea and Paul Buck Pierce and all those other coaches, they're finding areas where they need to improve because other teams are seeing those areas and they know, well, maybe this is where we can expose them. So there's always areas, regardless of how the game went, where you can improve on, and you want to make sure you keep improving. When you're the Bombers, you have to understand every single week is like a Grey Cup for other teams. They're trying to stop history from being made, so they're giving their best effort plus another 20% to try to stop that history. So every single game, these Bombers have to understand that those areas that they don't think they need improvement on, they better improve on them because these other teams are definitely looking to expose those areas.